Welcome to Inclusion Matters, produced by the Center for Inclusive Childcare,
aka the CICC.
We're located at inclusivechildcare.org.
Welcome to Inclusion Matters, a podcast of the Center for Inclusive Childcare. I'm Cindy Croft, Executive Director of the Center, and I'm here with two of my colleagues, Priscilla Weigel, our Assistant Director. Welcome, Priscilla.
Hi, Cindy.
And we're so happy to welcome Beth Menninga back with us again. She's our manager of the Relationship-Based Professional Development Services here at the Center, and she's also our Infant Toddler Specialist Network Manager. So we are thrilled. She's really our in-house infant toddler expert. Mm-hmm. And in our first podcast with Beth, she talked about how infants and toddlers learn and is making that connection with curriculum. And so she's going to tell us a little bit more, expand on what she talked about in the first podcast.
Yes, I wanted to dig in a little bit more to thinking about infants and toddlers and some developmental tasks they're working on as they're learning, all these different ideas that we talked about last time. And I like to use a framework. It's out of the Program for Infant Toddler Caregivers and West-Ed, or you may have heard about it from someone called Ron Lally or Peter Mangione. And they talk about sort of three big tasks that are the focus for infants and toddlers. One is security, another is exploration, and the third is identity. And they talk about how at different stages there's kind of a different emphasis among those three that helps us understand what might be the big challenge for children at that time or something to pay specific attention to as you're thinking about planning and curriculum and how you respond to those children at that point in their development. So thinking about those first months, really, those very young babies, and it's probably pretty obvious that security is the big focus there. Yeah. Because they're so vulnerable and they're really just getting everything under control in terms of their physical, motor skills, just being able to move and control those movements, but also arousal or what kind of excites their body, gets them going, what calms them down, as well as literally emotional responses. And so we know from attachment research, and we've talked about that in another podcast, is that children need a partner to help them regulate.
Yeah.
So that secure person and knowing that person is there is really a key focus. And knowing that person is reliable, that they're going to respond to me, that there's somebody who I really can get to know, or maybe a couple somebodies in centers. That's something to think about, is who's that somebody who's maybe the key person, the primary caregiver, that really gets to know this infant and create that relationship. But also not forgetting about the exploration and the identity. So are there some interesting things in the environment? Not too much, because remember that baby's still trying to regulate and control responses. So we don't want overstimulation, but something that's interesting. So yes, that like rocking, the connection through routines is critical, but also some opportunity to start to kind of look around as babies start to do that as they get a few months older and notice what's there. Some interesting things, as I mentioned before, about sensory experiences. And literally, I remember when I worked in an infant room, literally taking them outside, that kind of sensory experience where you experience the world through the sense of cold or warmth, or we used to take those babies out in all kinds of weather, bundle them up and 2 by 2, walking out. But that experience of the world as well as security, because they were with us, they were with other children they knew, so they felt secure. But really what they're working on first is that I feel secure.
And that consistency and predictability of the caregiver, too. And I think sometimes when we get a lot of calls, and that's what we do here, we give support to childcare. And so a lot of the calls that we have sometimes are focused on an infant who's crying a lot and really upset, and that provider's really trying hard to figure out what's going on, why, how. And some of it can be related to us as the caregiver, that anxiety that is produced by us not being able to figure out what that child needs. And so it's this vicious cycle, but reassuring, I think, to the provider to say, what are you doing to provide calm, consistent routines, that predictability, saying, I'm here, using that same tone of voice. I mean, there are so many things that providers can do when those behaviors happen, because the child's trying to tell us that they need something, and they don't have a lot of tools to tell us that, so they're using crying, or they're screaming sometimes too.
Yep. Yes, and not letting that trigger us, but instead bring on that calm connection is so important. And the parent piece is really critical there too, that partnership and reassuring parents, because all of our emotions get raised when children cry or feel like they're disturbed in some sort of way. So helping everyone recognize this is a natural reaction as a child gets used to a new space, develops a new relationship. So what can we do to create that consistency and safety for parents, especially first-time parents, but all parents, if they feel that safety with you as well, and that you're there to respond to them. So never forget that's a three-way relationship you're forming there. And I think that's something sometimes people forget is, yes, I need to connect with this baby. Part of connecting with this baby, I've got to connect with this parent.
Yeah, very true. So, very true.
Yeah.
And reassuring the parents that they're doing okay. I mean, you don't get a lot of pats on the back as a parent of a brand new infant when you're overwhelmed and you're tired and there's so much going on and you're trying to figure it out.
Yep. And you can both commiserate when a baby's crying.
Yes, you can. You can.
It's hard. This is hard work we're doing.
Yeah.
And we love this child, so we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And then things change. That's the thing about infants and toddlers.
That's true.
So once they become mobile, then our response is we're still calm, we're still there, but we are also going to have to get comfortable. And some adults have trouble with this, with them wanting to be more mobile, wanting to be more separate from us, checking out the world. And so that balancing between the attachment security piece, but now they want to explore and get out there. So that's another stage to think about in your curriculum is what are the opportunities to explore? Beginning before they become literally mobile, but they're going to start at certain, that 8 months and beyond, you're going to start to see a lot of movement around. So what's in your environment? Even during routines, how can you offer more opportunities for the child to be an active participant during that routine? Even more so than before, there's always that give and take, as you were doing with a very young infant. You're doing it with the toddler as they get into that mobile stages. They're going to want more control over the conversation.
Yes.
We'll talk about identity next. But even as they become mobile, like that balancing between being a secure base, having a safe environment, but also offering some chance to explore, to see what happens when I do this. So that means access to things. They need to have access to the toys. The toys aren't up high. There's not maybe a million toys out either. Again, don't want to overwhelm, but what's out there and noticing what they're interested in those opportunities to move. And kids are so different in how quickly they move and what kinds of movements they make, but helping them, have those opportunities to use that movement they're developing. You're continuing to regulate with them and help them figure out how to respond when their emotions get big, and sort of that connection, sometimes mirroring, because imitation gets to be a really big skill for them. So when you can respond in ways that they can copy or mirror, it helps them calm too. But recognizing they're going to be doing that with everyone and learning. That's part of that social learning we talked about. They're going to have more social interactions with other children, but they have no clue how to do that. Neither of them. No, so that can be interesting, but also recognizing, providing enough space for opportunities to be together and to be beside without having some stressing issues is another one when you think about curriculum and the environment.
Well, when you think about childcare, being together with maybe multi-ages all day long, and it is a lot. It's a lot if you're used to just having you at home with caregivers that are just there to focus on you, and now you're having to share that adult. It's a whole new realm of skills and abilities, and so giving little tastes, and it's kind of like putting your toe in the water a little bit. We're trying to do that for the baby, for the infant, to say, here's a little bit of a start. Now we're going to have some time where you can play over here by yourself, but you're still within visual seeing of what's going on, so that you're allowing that lantern opportunity as well. Yeah.
And I think for family childcare, you've got that multi-age challenge as well, where you have the young infants, and then as children start to get mobile, how can I offer more exploration, but if I still have a young infant in my care, keep them secure and safe.
Yeah.
And then my preschoolers, maybe they have a helping role in some of this. I think when we come from a center perspective, we don't think about that. But really with a multi-age group, you have challenges and opportunities to kind of think about your environment in different ways than you would in a center.
Definitely.
That's definitely a big one. And changing it up.
Okay.
Last thing is identity. That those toddlers, that when they hit the me, mine, I do it, not you, but then they want you to do it.
Yes.
I love it. You often hear people say toddlers are their first adolescents because they both want extreme independence and extreme attachment sometimes. It feels like they go back and forth because they're really figuring out how to manage their independence and who they are. So it becomes, that's often the period where you feel more push-pull with those toddlers.
Definitely.
So this is where choices in curriculum become a really important. Offering choices is really critical. Again, in those caregiving routines, when you think of that as curriculum, what role can the children play in this routine that makes them feel like they are independent, they can do this, they feel competent. And in those interactions, too, that you're really acknowledging. And that's true with all the children, all the ages, the joy that they have in learning, their accomplishments, their sense of competence, but really noting that with them. Like, wow, I can't believe how big that was. You were able to move that all the way across the room, and those kind of experiences. So they really know that you see them. And see them.
Yes.
Thank you, Beth. This has been great. I think you're helping to frame through these podcasts people's notion of curriculum. With when they're with that lens to infants and toddlers, and so I hope our listeners are able to kind of, maybe if they've had that idea of curriculum as a little more black and white, a little more book. And you're helping to show that it's more, the lens is more about the environment and the practices. And I hope that's helpful. It's certainly been enlightening to me. So thank you. Thank you, Priscilla.
Beth. Thank you.
That's all for now. See you next time.